To welcome everyone to this morning's program organized by the Artha Forum. For those of you who possibly would have seen us the last time, I think it was just barely a month and a half ago when we had another Artha Forum program with His Holiness Romapad Swami. That was very successful, it was well attended, and we are so happy to see you all here on a rainy morning in Singapore, and it's good that you made it despite the rain. We are so happy here to have a very distinguished guest, Gauranga Prabhu, all the way from Mumbai, where he is so busy, not just in Mumbai, but traveling all over India and across the world. In the next 1.5 to 2 hours, we invite you to spend your time and dedicate your attention to a very serious and important topic for us, corporate spiritual responsibility. I think most of us are in the corporate area, or if not, we have somehow or another been related to it. And we have heard of corporate social responsibility. CSR is a term that's been bandied around for close to the last 2 decades. But very few people realize that CSR, or corporate social responsibility as a concept, right, has been very much part of the Vedic model of India for thousands of years. Today, we're going to be introduced to something deeper than corporate social responsibility. It still has an S to it, but it's corporate spiritual responsibility. And I and you and all of us here are looking really forward to hearing from Gauranga Prabhu. Before that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Devaki Nandan Das. I will be your host for this morning. And it gives me great pleasure today to first of all invite the founder of Artha Forum, and his name is Rajiv Srivastava, known also as Radha Giridhari to many of us. Rajiv, I think, is the main reason why most of you are here today. And all of you have had very deep, strong, friendly and spiritual connections with him. It is actually not far-fetched to say that for those of us who have known him for so many years, Artha Forum has been the brainchild of Rajiv. It's actually an extension of his dedication to giving back to society. He's been an extremely successful entrepreneur, businessman, and he's been an extremely amazing and sincere devotee of the Lord. He has dedicated so much of his time to the principles of what we call earn with integrity and spend with compassion. And Artha Forum was conceived by him. It is a registered entity in Singapore, right? It's a non-profit guaranteed organization, and it runs programs in this way so as to create awareness, among other things, of not just our material responsibilities that we have towards ourselves, our families, and our society, but something deeper. All of us are in the capacity to give, and Rajiv has spearheaded this giving in Singapore. Apart from Singapore, he is also very actively involved in ensuring that Artha Forum thrives in many parts of the world, including Mumbai, including Dubai, and even in the US. And the whole idea of getting us together is actually Rajiv's passion about ensuring that he supports budding entrepreneurs, budding businessmen, and inculcates in them the sense of, let's not just look out for ourselves. Let's not just look out for what we can get from society, but rather what we can also give to society. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome him to say a little bit more about Artha Forum. And I think it's just wonderful that now with COVID at least being controlled and managed, we're all able to actually see each other. And that makes such a difference. So I want to warmly first welcome all of you. We have beverages behind in case you want a drink or you want to grab something, feel free. I think you can just go through the door that's now open and right at the back. And other than that, if you need anything from us, we will be around. So put your hands together to welcome Rajiv Srivastava. Please go.
Thank you, Devaki Nandan Prabhu. Warm welcome, all of you. Good morning. And thank you for making the time to come on a Saturday morning with all the rains coming here. And thank you, Gauranga Prabhu. You actually literally flew last night. I think you probably might be still a little jet lagged, and yet you've given us the time. And thank you, Girja, for at very short notice, agreeing to host a small fireside chat with Gauranga Prabhu later. I'll just come to the slide in a few minutes. I can just share something, nice about the theme of Artha Forum. Recently, I was introduced to a wonderful young entrepreneur in Dallas, Texas. I won't like to name him. He likes to keep, some of what he does private. Of course, Gauranga Prabhu has met him also recently. And one of our very, very dear, I would say, very dear proponents of the Artha Forum, where he has been a keynote speaker at so many of the events, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami, who's no more today with us, but he has sown a lot of seeds. And I'll just tell you an interesting seed that he, shared in Dallas. So when this person met Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who has spoken at many of our events, Bhakti Charu Maharaj asked him, "What are you doing?" So, and he said, I'm doing jewelry business." So Maharaj just very spontaneously told him, "Why don't you make Krishna a partner in your business?" So for some time he was a little stunned. He said, "Look, I'm a Marwadi businessman. No disrespect to Marwadi business people, but he said that why should I make Krishna a partner in my business? Normally, you make someone a partner who invests money into the business or adds value." So Bhakti Charu Maharaj told him that very shortly you will find out why I'm requesting you to do this. So a week later, he was doing, he does these jewelry businesses, they have exhibitions. So he does and he's been doing jewelry business for the last 20 years. So at the next exhibition, as he had been meditating and thinking, yes, Swamiji has told me to make Krishna a partner in my business. And but he's also torn that he says, "Look, why should I actually do that?" He was being honest. And sure enough, at the next exhibition, his turnover and profits were 5 times his normal profits. So he promptly called Bhakti Charu Swami and said, "Now I see the value and I will make Krishna a partner in my business." Long story short, as the same person started thinking in this way, where normally most people in business are trying to do business and just primarily looking to increase their wealth and do share some part of that to giving back. But once this person decided to do things, where he is now very transparently decided to make giving back a significant part of his business, you will be surprised that today his business, and he said, "Look, I'm otherwise a simple person doing jewelry business, which is a pretty tough business, especially in the US. And he just had the strong desire that that he wants to give a significant amount of wealth, which he didn't have any idea how he's going to be able to do that. But by just thinking this way, he changed his attention to commercial real estate. And he has now built a fairly successful business. His own, wealth has grown to over 200 million, and of which he's committed half to giving back. So a simple entrepreneur, but just thinking this way, has done well. There are some more who I don't want to embarrass, so I will not share their names as well, who are thinking this way, and they have really grown their business pretty significantly. And I will just share this slide, which I really was very surprised to see, that in the past 100 years, we think Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or Rockefeller are the biggest givers. But when I saw that in the past 100 years, the group that has given maximum back is our own Tata Group. And the Tata Group, where Mr. Girja Pandey has been the chairman of the APAC business, they have structured their business over 100 years back, where more than 55% of their ownership is owned by charitable trusts, whether it's cancer, education. And by having such a transparent and unique way of building their business, which is steeped in the dharmic principle of giving back, they have continued to grow. And you can be rest assured that when businesses are structured this way, whether it's IKEA, whether it is Tata Group, each of them have continued to do well. So without taking any more time, I'll like to invite Devkinandan Prabhu to share some brief details about Gaurang Prabhu and give us all this wisdom about how we can earn with integrity and spend with compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv Prabhu. Thank you very much. Gauranga Prabhu is a leadership and mindfulness coach. He is a mentor. He's based in Bombay. He graduated from the IIT of Mumbai. And then after that, where most people go on to find themselves in a luminary or illustrious career, his calling became that of a monk. Today, from a spiritual side, he's a member of the governing body commission known as the GBC, which is actually the global managing body for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which means not only is his portfolio based, among other things, in India, but it is a global duty that he does. And specifically, his service in the GBC and ISKCON is to enhance leadership, effectiveness, and governance of temples, and to bring good practices to the organization. But Gauranga Prabhu is more than that. He's very dedicated to helping people from all walks of life. He's been an inspiring leader for youths. And we're having a youth program, by the way, this afternoon. And we're having problems because people at the age of 40 come up to me and say, do I qualify as a youth to hear Gauranga Prabhu? I say, you don't, but that's how it is. So he's dedicated to not just transforming people, but he's also transforming their lives. And apart from that, he has a very amazing portfolio that he holds, and that's the reason why he's here today, among other things. He is the director of what we call ISKCON's Govardhan Eco Village. It's known popularly as GEV. It's founded by His Holiness Radhanath Swami, and this GEV, Govardhan Eco Village, representing India, has won over 36 national and international awards. And that includes awards like the UN World Tourism Organization Award that was given in 2017 for its innovative model of what we call eco-tourism. It has also been a catalyst for what we call rural development. Gauranga Prabhu has strategized and he has led to the execution of GV's synergistic solution to what we call the Sustainable Development Goals. These are known as SDGs, not just for environment, but for the deeper issues like climate change. He's also, through his directorship and through his steering and able leadership, he has actually obtained GEV's accreditations to multiple United Nations bodies, including the UNEP, UN Eco Society, UNCCD, and UNCBD, amongst a few. He's also the Faith for Earth Counselor in UNEP, as I understand, and he does that on behalf of ISKCON. The Indian Green Building Council in India has recognized him as an IGBC Fellow for his immense contributions to the green building movement. He also sits on a very unique area known as the Govardhan School of Public Leadership. It's actually an institution that prepares students for civil services examinations. And he travels the world empowering youths in a variety of seminars. To many of us, he is a mentor, he is a guide, he is an inspiration. And today we're very fortunate to have him despite his extremely hectic schedule. So Gauranga Prabhu, we welcome you to Singapore. We hope that with the opening up of all the travels, this will not be the last time you come, but the first of many times, despite all your hectic schedules. Can we put our hands together and warmly welcome Gauranga Prabhu?
Thank you very much, Radha Girdhari Prabhu, Rajiv, and Devakinandan Prabhu. So I'm going to be speaking on corporate spiritual responsibility. Very interesting topic. And I'm writing a book on this, which should be released next year. The idea behind this is the seed given by one of our acharyas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, on four kinds of intentions which drive human action. The Bhagavad Gita describes three modes of nature: mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. At the lowest level is mode of ignorance, and inspired by mode of ignorance, we have intention inspired by fear. People have fear, and because of that fear, they perform various activities. If I do not do this, what will happen? So sometimes it is that fear which drives action. And for those of you who may not be familiar with my background, I also got introduced to spiritual philosophy through one such experience in IIT. When I was studying, then I had one of my friends who tried to commit suicide, although he was a very good student. Today in India, 370 people commit suicide every single day. 300 million people globally are experiencing stress-related symptoms. The COVID pandemic may have subsided, but the stress and anxiety pandemic, it is still on and growing at a very rapid pace. So when this friend of mine tried to commit suicide, many of us were bewildered because he was doing quite well. When I asked him why you tried to commit suicide, he said that I'm used to getting the gold medal in every exam. This was the first time I got a silver medal, and I couldn't handle it. So I told him that is strange. People are dying to get inside IIT, and you are inside IIT trying to die. And then he said, what to do? I try to reason with myself. I try to intellectually and rationalize, but I couldn't deal with it. So yes, it's a fact that the mind is a world of its own. It can create a heaven out of hell and hell out of heaven. And all kinds of fears can manifest from areas we may not even be aware. Interestingly, in the same exam, 3 or 4 of my other friends, they failed in 4 or 5 subjects. But they were moving around the campus peacefully, blissfully, blessing others also. Encouraging them, relax. Why are you in anxiety? Look at us. So I was intrigued. I asked them, I told them in Hindi, bade besharam ho aap log. This other fellow has got a silver medal. He's trying to kill himself. You guys have failed in 3 or 4 subjects. How come you are so peaceful? And they said, our philosophy in life is very simple. To enter the college is our job. To take us out of the college is college's job. हाँ, हिंदी में बोला, कॉलेज में घुसना हमारा काम है, निकालना कॉलेज का काम है. Why should we be in anxiety? So typically we have the modern education system which is focused on circumstances and adjusting and changing the circumstances. And therefore, when people are engaged in activities, and if that activity is inspired by fear of not accomplishing a certain level of success, fear of being overwhelmed or overtaken by someone, all these kinds of fears, they lurk deep within the heart. And when a person is inspired by fear, you can never predict how that particular person's response to various situations will be. And therefore, Today in India, you'll be surprised to know that there are more than 2 million temples. And one may wonder, why do all of these temples exist in the first place? Because the root cause of all fear which we experience is change. Change is the fundamental cause of all fear. When you experience pain in the body, the place where you go to cope with that pain is the hospital. What do you do when you cope with the pain which is caused by change? When you deal with change, you have to deal with the solution of something which is beyond change. Therefore, all forms of spirituality exist to help you arrest the fears and anxieties caused by change. Across all traditions, whether it is Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Sikhism, Hinduism, all kinds of religion, religious places of worship, religious books, all of them deal with one topic. They all deal with the topic of how to help people cope with the anxiety and fear caused by change. And that is what is common amongst all these traditions. And that's why today there is 31% of the world is Christian, 23% is Muslim, 15% Hindus, and 8.5% Buddhists. And across the world, although technology is changing, although the lifestyle is changing, but still there is an innate need which all of us have to experience stability beyond any kind of change. And therefore, the fear which is caused by sudden change can actually be very unnerving. I've been to hospitals and been in ICUs. One of my friends, he got a heart attack. And I said, what happened? You look quite fit. You have also made good money. The way your career was going, it didn't appear that there was any problem. He said, actually everything was going well, but in one of the recent promotions, somebody who was 2 levels junior to me was promoted above me. And he became my boss. And I tried my level best to handle that intellectually. But in spite of all my efforts, I couldn't deal with it. And then it manifested in the form of this heart attack. So the business schools are teaching people how to get that promotion. But the business schools are not teaching how to respond if someone else gets the promotion. And therefore, I say the business schools are teaching people how to be successful, and spiritual people are teaching people how to be happy. So what is the difference between success and happiness? Success is to get what you like, and happiness is to like what you get. And therefore, the first level of intention which drives people, the lowest level, is when we are inspired by fear. And any change actually creates so much of anxiety. Like when I joined the ashram, at that time I was sent to the kitchen to serve. This was 1993, 30 years ago. Raji was still around in the temple. He was working with the TCS, and I came as a young student, and I met him for the first time, and he was living in the temple and going to the TCS and coming back and stuff like that. So I said to him, And he was one of the pioneers of preaching in IIT. He would come and give the message of the Gita to the students and all that. So I was very inspired by seeing his lifestyle and everything. So that was the time when I just joined. And when I joined, in the temple you're sent to different departments to serve, so I was sent to the kitchen. 2 or 3 weeks later, after I joined, there was one more gentleman who joined. He was also sent to the kitchen to serve. So since there was nobody else in the kitchen, I was like the in charge. Sometimes you become in charge because nobody is there. Nobody is around. So I was that kind of in charge. So the next guy who joined, he was also sent to the kitchen. So he was like a 6.5 foot tall guy, well built, looked very muscular, may have been a wrestler in his village or whatever. So I gave him the task of making chapati. Because I thought he's sturdy and, आटा भी अच्छा लगाएगा और chapati भी बढ़िया बनेगा. So the guy was, making chapatis 3-4 days, and after a week he comes to me and complains. He says, "Do you know my talent? When I'm in my village, when I get up and give lecture, whole village stands. I joined ISKCON so that I can preach Sanatan Dharma. I joined to give lecture on Sanatan Dharma, not to make chapati. You people have no value for talent." इतने बड़े preacher को चपाती बनाने लगा दिया. So I said, "Why you are telling me? मैं भी वही कर रहा हूँ." So what is the point you and me talking? Go and tell the in charge. He says, no, if I tell the in charge, he will give me a long lecture. So I'm just sharing with you. Again, after 2 weeks, he came and complained. I came to become preacher of Sanatan Dharma, not to make chapati. After 1 month, he came with his bag and said, "I'm leaving the temple." I said, "Where you are going?" "I'm going home." I said, "Why?" "Because I came to be preacher, not to make chapati." 10 years later, I met him at a program. He came running to me. He said, "After I left the temple, I got married. After my marriage, my wife got back pain. Every day at home, I am making chapati." And then he said, "Maybe I should have been a little patient." But the problem is, all of us react without thinking to changes which happen. And therefore, all kinds of fears which overwhelm us, it's because we are not trained and equipped to deal with change. So on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna was all set to fight. Arjuna had no doubts why he was there. Arjuna had not come to Kurukshetra battlefield with mridang and kartal for doing kirtan. He had come with arrows and bow. His Gandiva was right there. But what Krishna did was brought Arjuna's chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona. That was the delta change Krishna made. As long as Arjuna was looking at Duryodhana, he was all set to fight. Krishna said, "Okay, Arjuna, just little change. What is life without change?" So he brought the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona and said, "Now, shoot." So then Arjuna's paradigm changed. Because he thought, in front of Duryodhana I am supposed to be a warrior to kill, but Bhishma is my grandfather and Drona is my teacher. I am supposed to respect my teacher, I am supposed to love my grandfather, I am supposed to kill my enemy. So at that moment, suddenly Arjuna was confused between 3 identities. As a warrior, as a student, as a grandson. And these multiple identities confused Arjuna. And he became overwhelmed with fear. And Arjuna says, "Ve pathuscha sarire me ro maharshascha jayate, gandi vasram sate hasta tvakchaiva paridahyate." My entire body is burning. My skin is on fire. My hands and limbs are trembling. and Arjuna could not fight. So Arjuna experienced extreme fear. And at that moment, Krishna stepped in to realize that Arjuna's swabhava nature is to fight. Arjuna's occupation, swadharma, is to fight. Many people in today's life are confused because they are not able to have an occupation which is as per their nature. They have one nature, they have a different occupation. And because of misalignment between their nature and occupation, also many people get frustrated. But Arjuna did not have problem. His nature was to fight. His occupation was as a fighter. So his swabhava and swadharma was that of fight, of being a fighter. But in spite of that, the circumstances changed and he couldn't cope with it. So at that time, Krishna realized, I have to help Arjuna go to a next level of identity. And so Krishna introduced an identity for Arjuna which will not change. And that is known as Swarupa. So he revealed to Arjuna, you are actually not a fighter. You are not actually just a Kshatriya warrior. You are not just an enemy of Duryodhana. You are not just a grandson. You are not just a student. You are actually a soul, Atma. So that was the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. And the Gita was spoken to bring Arjuna to the level of a soul. So that's the level of intention. When one fights or when engages in an activity inspired by fear, that is the lowest level. And therefore it is not very long lasting. And in due course of time, many changes happen which will overwhelm a person and will no longer make the person capable of doing things. Many of the students we see commit suicides because there is so much of pressure from the family and other social circuit that you must do this, you must do that, you must do this, you must do that, and they can't cope with it. And many of them are studying because they just have that intention of fear. If I don't study, then what will happen? Somebody will do like this, somebody will say like that. So many times it is social comparison and fear of social comparison, of social pressure, which is making people do things. One of my friends went to a conference. He gave someone a visiting card. In the card was written his name, and below the name was written educational qualification, PhD BF. He said, what is this? And he said, PhD but fail. So someone said, what does it mean? He said, actually, I never wanted to be PhD. My father wanted me to be PhD. So I entered PhD. After 2 years, I realized it is not here in my future. So when I came out of PhD, dropped out of PhD, then there was pressure. You must attend conferences. Why? Your cousin is attending. Your neighbor is attending. So I started attending conference, but to be honest, I had to add PhD and in front of PhD add something which was truthful, BF. But you know what? Most people when they say BF, they think it is a degree beyond PhD. You are the first person who's asking so many details. So many times people are into a system. They apparently are doing activities and they may appear acting enthusiastically also. But the intention behind that is many times out of fear. And if you ask them, they'll say, I actually don't want to do it. But it is because of fear that I am doing this. We have a hotel in Mumbai called Hotel President. Only if you can afford, you'll enter there. But right outside Hotel President, one guy on a thelawala, for hand cart, he started selling vada pav. and samosa right outside Hotel President. And it was just on a 4-wheel hand cart, thela. And he called that hotel vice president. And his marketing pitch was, if you can't afford the president, come to vice president. So, what the modern education system is not teaching us is that when people are involved in activities, but the intention behind those activities is many times inspired by fear out of various things. It could be comparisons, it could be, socially mandated or enforced that you must do like this, you must do like that. They are not able to express themselves. But that fear is driving them. And so similarly also in businesses, when people are engaged in doing business, but that business is inspired by the fact that someone is doing like this, and therefore I should also do like that. It arises out of intention of fear or comparison. Then it will not last very long, and it is not very healthy also. So therefore, I really like the story of one boy. He was just like a small boy, and he was playing outside his house in a village, and he was playing marbles. Simple boy. His father was very poor, and he was just playing marbles in front of his house, and a very wealthy person passed by. This wealthy person was without any children. He saw this small boy, and he turned around and saw the mother of the boy and said, "Whose boy is this?" So in villages, they have a tendency of responding when you ask, "Kiska hai?" Bole, "Aapka hi hai." So that lady, out of social etiquette, she said, "This boy is yours only." So that rich man became very enthusiastic and said, "Then I want him. Because I am without a son, I want to adopt him." So then the lady panicked. She thought she's just being, socially nice and following the etiquette, but she never imagined he will take it literally. So she immediately escalated the matter to her husband. The husband came. "What is the matter?" She said, "This is what happened." Husband was also very idealist. He said, "You have already given word, so you have to give." So she got even more bewildered. So finally they worked it out and actually handed over that boy to this big wealthy businessman. That wealthy businessman's name was Mr. Bachulal Bajaj. He adopted this boy. This boy from the village streets became Ramakrishna Bajaj. And then his son Rahul, and then his son Rajiv, he shares this story in a beautiful podcast. That when he went to the village, he saw his watchman and watchman's children playing there. And Rajiv was thinking that actually the whole world may be saying that, you came to this level because of this business strategy or that business strategy or this particular investment, that investment. But actually, it was a twist of destiny. If that Mr. Bajaj had picked up another boy, then maybe the watchman would actually be the chairman and I would be the watchman. So many times, the choices are made which are beyond our control, and certain situations we land up in. So all spiritual messaging is centered around helping us cope with the fear which is caused due to change. So that's what Thakur Bhaktivinoda explains, that at the lowest level of intention is fear. Next level, beyond fear, is mode of passion. And the second level of intention is desire. There is a desire. Let me grow. Let me do this. Let me do that. Which is also good, but it comes from the mode of passion. And when we are inspired by the mode of passion, there are various desires which we try to fulfill. And the 14th chapter Gita also explains the effect of performing activities in the mode of passion. And sometimes it can become overwhelming. One may be filled with various kinds of anxieties. One may not know where to draw the line and say enough is enough. So various such symptoms come when one is influenced by the mode of passion. There is a story of the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China was built in such a robust manner that nobody could penetrate it. But the few times where the enemies were able to penetrate was not through the wall, but by bribing the gatekeeper of the wall. So there were gatekeepers and guards, and just by bribing them, the enemy could enter. So there was a lot of work done on the wall itself, but not on the people, so that they could resist temptations. In the year 1968, as per United Nations data, there were 300 million students in high school across the world. There were 3 million high school students in USA, 300,000 students in the state of Washington. In the Lakeside School in Seattle, there were 300 high school students, and there was a teacher by the name of Bill Doggle, and he convinced the Parents Teachers Association to give some money, and with that $5,000-6,000 he purchased a bunch of computers. And they were the first computers in that school, thanks to his initiative. As a result of what he did, there were 2 students who were extremely obsessed with working on those computers, even beyond the study time. And those 2 students were Bill Gates and Paul Allen. And therefore, Microsoft manifested. So in one of the graduation ceremony speeches, Bill Gates mentioned, if Lakeside School was not there, then Microsoft would not be there also. So yes, there may be circumstances, there may be situations, there may be facilities, but you have to have desire to do something. And therefore, when there is an inspiration and impetus which is caused by desire, then that also helps in manifest progress in various ways. In the year 2007, we found that there was a global meltdown caused by various scams. The Lehman Brothers collapsed. But then we found that one of the professors in the B school in America wrote a paper that in 2007, when globally all the economies were going down, Indian economy was going up. And he said, what is the reason? And he called it Jugaad, a kind of resilience and innovation. And he said that yes, there is a powerful desire to go beyond the existing paradigm and fight it out and have a certain kind of resilience. When I was in Microsoft in Seattle giving lecture, I saw so many Indians, and I asked the HR guy, why so many Indians? He said that for software technology, you need problem-solving skills. And Indians are very good at that. They don't give up so easily. They think out of the box and come with some solutions. because they are used to so many problems growing up. So they don't give up. And I was in a train with one friend from New York. And as we were sitting there, the fan above our head was not working. Right in front of us, there were two gentlemen. They saw that the fan was not working. One of them took out his comb, because I don't carry one. So he took out his comb and started moving the blades of the fan. The other friend got up and started switching on and off, and the fan started moving. Now this friend from New York, he was so fascinated, he took out his camera and he said, "This is awesome, I must take a picture of this." And then he looked at me and said, "What is this?" I said, "This is traditional Indian technology." So I was actually traveling on a flight from Mumbai to Kolkata with two friends from LA. We landed in Kolkata. We were supposed to go to IIT Kharagpur for a program which is 3 hours away. When I came out of the airport, I was told that that day is Bengal Bandh and no vehicles will move. So when I came out, they offered garlands to me, welcomed me. I looked at them and said, "So today program is cancelled, right? Because Bengal Bandh." They said, "No, program is on." I said, "But Bengal Bandh, how will we go?" Well, no, we have come to pick you up in ambulance. Out of box. So when we were entering the ambulance, my two friends from LA, they looked at me and said, "Why are we entering ambulance?" I said, "It's very difficult to explain, because first I have to tell you what is bandh. That will take long time. So better let us get inside. Some people may throw stones now and then, but don't worry, we are in the right vehicle, ambulance." So I was in front, they were behind. And at one point somebody stopped us and said, "I want to see who's behind." And he looked, peeked inside. My two friends, after taking breakfast with garlands around their neck, were sleeping peacefully. This guy looks inside and said, "Inki atma ko shanti mile." And within 2 hours we reached. So yes, if we have to overcome obstacles and attain a certain level of success, we need intense desire that in spite of all obstacles, our progress is not stopped. And that is why most of the successful people have a very strong and intense desire to accomplish. Without that, it is not possible to remain focused over long periods of time. So it is being acknowledged as a very important inspirer, the intention caused by strong desire. But if you simply have that, we may not be equipped to deal with the changes which may suddenly happen. Take the example of Hanumanji. Hanumanji was leading the battle in Lanka against Ravana. He was the hero. And then in the next yuga, Hanumanji was told by the Lord not to be the hero, but to sit on the flag of Arjuna's chariot. So when Ram was there, Hanuman was the hero. When Krishna was there, Arjuna was made the hero, and Hanuman was asked to sit on the flag. So Hanumanji did not walk out, saying that, "From hero you have made me zero? What is this?" So that was Hanumanji's test. And therefore, he continued performing at what we call as the intention caused by sense of duty. So this is the third level, that fear, desire, and then duty. So when we perform activities with the intention of duty, that is where the mode of goodness begins. And so Bhagavad Gita, Krishna looks at Arjuna and says, "Arjuna, right now you are overwhelmed with ichha and dvesha, the desire and fear. Just because you are seeing Bhishma, just because you are seeing Drona, you feel, I must love Bhishma and Drona, and you feel, I must kill Duryodhana. But you are on the Pandava side, and whoever is on Kaurava's side, you are supposed to kill. So you will not be able to perform this activity of a soldier unless you rise above the intention of fear and intention of desire and come to the level of intention of duty. And therefore the famous shloka Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita, Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So then Krishna lifts Arjuna to the level of intention inspired by the sense of duty. This is my duty. I must do this because I am expected to do this. And when one is situated at that platform, then they can actually overcome various challenges and difficulties which may come. So this sense of duty is very, very important. And the sense of duty rises and takes you beyond the level of desire and fear. And so Arjuna was given that task that this is your duty. And then Krishna also says, do not do someone else's duty. You are supposed to be doing this particular duty. Engage in your duty. Shreyan swadharmo viguna. To perform your own duty is better than to imitate someone else's duty. So therefore, no, do not try to imitate someone else's duty. Just do your duty. Right? There was someone who came to a town and gave a whole talk on how to become an exciting public speaker. And 100 people signed up. And he said, if you want to become an effective public speaker, the beginning of your speech must be sensational. And then he said, I recommend something like this at the beginning. And he said, the best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who was not my wife. And everybody got stunned. Hey, what's he saying? And he said, and that woman was my mother. And they said, oh wow, that's a very amazing way of attracting attention. So one of the guys who attended that went to his village, called the whole village, said, I have become public speaker. The whole village came. He stood on the podium. And then he said, let me begin with the same formula. And he said, the best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who was not my wife. And then he became so nervous, he forgot the next line. And then he started thinking. In spite of all of his efforts, he couldn't remember. And he said, and I can't remember who she was. So here he is. Just because he sees someone promising that you can become like this, you can become like that, you also try to do the same thing. But it doesn't work. And therefore, the Gita not only ensures that Arjuna follows his duty, Krishna also tells Arjuna, don't become distracted by seeing others' duties. Focus on your duty. And that's, I think, very, very crucial and very important, especially in today's social media day and age, where everybody seems to get influenced by everyone else. Right? And so it happened, Mahabharata describes that at one point of time, Bhima also got influenced. Because Bhima saw that Arjuna is being called for various singing programs. For various cultural events, Arjuna is being invited. Bhima is not being invited. So Bhima started thinking, what is this? For all the refined events, Arjuna is the chief guest. I am being called only to smash others and to beat up others. I also will become singer. Everybody tried to tell him, Hare Baba, you are not meant to be. He says, no, I will try. So Bhima went to the best music teacher in Indraprastha and told him, train me to become the best singer. That teacher was thinking it's impossible. But he didn't have guts to speak because it was Bhima. So he started teaching him, and Bhima was practicing sitting at the gate of Indraprastha, shouting at the top of his lungs. The whole city was shaking. People came and complained to Yudhishthir, Arey samjhao bhai ko. Yudhishthir said, Arey, who will give him feedback? Because whoever tries to give him feedback will get smashed. So they said Draupadi is the only one. So Draupadi went and told Bhima, Arey Baba, Sangeet, music is a very refined art. It should be practiced in solitude, not here in front of everybody. Go to the mountains, go to the forest. So Bhima went deep into the forest, sat there and was singing, and one day suddenly he found from behind the bushes, one man came and looked at him and then ran away. Bhima said, hey, who's that? Bhima started chasing the guy, caught hold of him and said, why did you run away? Who are you? He said, actually I am a washerman, dhobi, and my donkey went missing. When I heard this sound, I thought I found my donkey, I became happy. That day Bhima retired. Sometimes you tell people, Arey, you are not meant for this. Don't do this. They'll say, Arey, he is doing, they are doing. Results are showing, it is working for so many. Why it will not work for me? I will also do. So sometimes only circumstances give feedback. Our verbal feedback may not help. So therefore Krishna says to Arjuna, in this situation, you are the warrior. You have to perform this duty. Bhishma is there, Drona is there, all the family members are there. You can't be asking question why I am put in that situation. You are in that situation, you are supposed to do this duty, execute it, do it. That will actually elevate your consciousness. So therefore, the interesting thing is Arjuna followed that principle to the core. When Nelson Mandela was released from the prison, one of his good friends, Bill Clinton, was watching the entire scene on television. And then later he mentioned to Mr. Mandela that when I saw that you were walking out after being released, after being in prison for more than 25-30 years, I could see some anger in your eyes. And Mr. Mandela said, yes, I was angry with them. That from my age of 45 till early 70s, I was inside the prison. But then as I was coming out, I started thinking, if they are releasing me from the prison, I cannot allow myself to be imprisoned by feelings of anger. And therefore, I decided I forgive them. And therefore, even if sometimes we perform activities out of a sense of duty, but if we are seething with rage within, with anger within, that why I am doing this, so that also will not give the complete experience. And so, anger is one letter short of danger. And I was giving a talk at MIT in Boston. They set up the, PowerPoint, LCD projector and all. And he was trying to work that projector, it was not working. And I was about to begin the lecture and I was waiting when they will start it. But finally the organizer came and whispered in my ear, I'm sorry sir, but the LCD projector is not working. You please depend on Krishna and give your lecture. And I was thinking, my philosophy is telling me only. And that too in MIT. And I couldn't say anything because the topic of my lecture was overcoming anger. And the first slide was supposed to be, you may plan many things in life, but things will not go as per your plan. So you have to be ready for that. So when we are performing activities inspired by the sense of duty, still there may be situations which will be beyond our control. And we need to be able to control our emotions, because these emotions from within are very powerful. I was giving a lecture in a jail in Pune called Yeravada jail. 500 prisoners were in front of me. I like jail lectures. You know why? Because audience is guaranteed. No advertisement required. If I am coming to Artha Forum, I don't know how many will come. RSVP is there, not there, but jail program, 100%. They just have to open the cell and they all come. So I gave a talk. After the talk, I said, any questions? One prisoner raised his hand. Said, I have a question. I said, ask. He said, I want to come to the stage and ask the question. I looked at the commissioner and said, who is he? Commissioner said, he has committed 12 murders. I said, I'm going to be 13th or what? He says, no, let him come. So he came on the stage, asked this question, and it was such a philosophical question. Everybody in the audience started clapping, that there is a Pandit amongst us also. Then after I gave the answer, I asked him, why at such a young age you came here into the jail? So many crimes you have committed. And he said, when I become overwhelmed with anger, it becomes a blind spot. I can't see anything. And I lose control over myself. And that's what happened. But in this jail, different prisoners have to perform various activities as part of reform. And I was asked to translate books in Braille language. And believe it or not, last 6 months I've been translating which book in Braille language? Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada. And he said, now I'm awake to the fact that I am not just prisoner within these walls, but my anger, my lust, my envy, within my heart, they are keeping me captive. They are enslaving me. And we need to overcome those. So therefore, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, after taking us through the intention due to fear, intention due to desire, and intention of duty, says that beyond all of this, the highest intention is intention out of a feeling of love. And what is the meaning of love? In every relationship, there is scarcity, impediment, discomfort, unhappiness. But in spite of that, if one continues to serve without any selfish intention, so therefore, service without selfish consideration is what is known as love. And so, the highest level of intention is inspired by selfless service. And that selfless service finds its full meaning when the soul is in a relationship with the original person from whom the soul has manifested, the super soul. As I said, everything in this world changes, but the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Divine, He does not change, the soul doesn't change. As they say in Sanskrit, the Atma doesn't change, the Paramatma doesn't change. The relationship between Atma and Paramatma does not change. When one is situated in this kind of understanding, then he is on a stable platform and goes beyond all kinds of fear. And to teach this unchanging element, all kinds of spiritual traditions manifest. That's why across all spiritual traditions, prayer is recommended in the morning. That you begin the day by first recognizing your unchanging element, the spiritual element. I am the spirit, connected to the Supreme Spirit through eternal service. This is not going to change. With that confidence of that which is never going to change, jump into the world of your 12 to 18 hours of business, which is full of fluctuations and changes. Come back, and again at night, remember that whatever changes may have happened in the day, ultimately there are elements which are not going to change. That gives you the kind of stability which is unbelievable. And that is the spiritual element which we are talking about. Many years ago in the 90s, there was a businessman, and this was of course in the stock market. And he came up with an amazing scheme. He reached out to one of his friends that you should join me in this scheme. You will make so much of money, your seven generations will not have to make any money. This friend was a devotee living in the temple with Rajiv. So he came to the temple and talked to one of our monks who was at that time president of the temple, who was also a banker. And he said to him that I got an offer like this. It's kind of not fully illegal, it's not fully legal also, but depends on interpretation. What do you think? This devotee leader in the temple president told him, no, you can't do this. But this devotee was still very attached to that idea. He said, whatever money I make, some part I'll give to temple also. You'll also get. He says, no, that may be so, but let's not get into this. This is not going to be of benefit. It's very dangerous. It's not ethical. Forget it. So he did not want to get out of it, but because this devotee was really insisting, he surrendered. He told his friend, I'm sorry, but my friends are not allowing me to get into this. He says, come on, think again. You won't get this chance again and again. He says, no, I've made my decision. So anyway, this businessman, this stockbroker, he started his scheme, went very well for some time. Then inevitably, the scam came out. He was arrested, put in jail. One day, this devotee gets a call from that person's wife. The guy who was arrested, his wife calls him. Says, can you come to the jail, come to the prison, meet your friend. So he goes to the prison. Wife is there, brings him in front of the husband who's jailed, and says, there is only one difference between my husband and you. And this devotee said, what is that? And the wife said, you had a friend who could protect you, and my husband did not have that friend. If only he had that friend, maybe he could also have been protected. And therefore, when a person goes through severe, serious temptations, what really binds him and protects him is the association of people who are connected in a mood of selfless service. Otherwise, it's a razor's edge. And therefore, we need the close association of friends and family members. When we speak about intention out of love, we should also remember that what keeps our consciousness together is not just our own efforts, but many times it is the support and the advice we get of close family members also. Let us remember that the whole world is simply talking about GDP. People are not investing enough energy in family as an institution. Goldman Sachs came with a report that between 2015 to 2025, the infrastructure development in India would require almost $1.3 trillion. Then they asked the question from where that money will come. $800 billion would come from family savings. So one of the greatest contributors to the economy is the housewife. And therefore, we should remember that we may be taking certain things for granted. But if we do not invest in those institutions may disappear. I was giving a talk at a college in America. One young boy came to me, started speaking to me in Hindi. I looked at him and said, "You look American, you speak Hindi, who are you?" He said, "I grew up in California, I'm an American. When I was 17 years old, I told my dad, you gave me everything in life except the experience of family, because when I was 2 years old, you were divorced." So a country like Luxembourg has 88% divorce rate, Spain has 65% divorce rate, France has 55% divorce rate, Russia has 51% divorce rate, America has 46% divorce rate, the global divorce rate is 44%. India still has one of the lowest divorce rate at 1%. His dad told him, go to India, experience what is family. He came to a family somewhere in Varanasi and told them, allow me to stay in your family as a paying guest for 2 years to experience what it means to have emotions and exchanges and eat with family members and have feelings with other family members. Just allow me 2 years of an experience in your family. If you allow me to experience what is family for 2 years, I'll give you every month a rent of 1 lakh rupees. That family said, why 2 years? Stay whole life. And then they said, if you have other friends who want to experience family also, we can invite them also. But believe me, many times we may take this for granted. And therefore, when we speak about intention out of love, the family which prays together, stays together, there needs to be a common point. And therefore, when we speak about intention out of love, then it begins with understanding my identity as a soul, as an Atma. I'm eternally related to the Paramatma as part and parcel. Just like you may have affection and special affinity for other family members, when we start considering Bhagavan as our ultimate father, then we look at feelings of compassion towards not just humanity, but all living forms. And therefore, at the Govardhan Eco Village, which was established by His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, following in the vision of Srila Prabhupada of simple living, high thinking, and establishing places in rural communities where you could establish harmony with the self, harmony with the divine, harmony with nature, and harmony with community. That was the idea of why the Govardhan Eco Village was established, because ultimately all spiritual traditions enable us to experience harmony. And therefore, when we speak about corporate spiritual responsibility, I am referring to the responsibility which all business leaders have in understanding their identity, that identity which goes beyond board member, chairman, CEO, equity holder, founder, this, that, and everything, these are all changing identities. But there is an identity which all of you have which does not change, as the soul. When you realize that identity, then based on the identity, then you can act with that intention. Not the intention of fear, not the intention of desire, not the intention even of duty, going beyond call of duty, but with the intention of love, selfless service. And with that, you are empowered with a revolutionary volcanic energy which can help you not only execute your tasks with brilliance, but most importantly, experience the deepest ideas of joy and satisfaction. Today's world, people are only focused on execution. But if that execution leaves you with an experience of anxiety, with an experience of shallowness, then you are not living life to its fullest capacity. So the idea of corporate spiritual responsibility is you go beyond selfish, you go beyond social, and you come to the level of spiritual. That means at the level of fear and desire, it is still selfish. At the level of duty, at least you begin social. This is my duty. I have to give 2%. I have to give 10%. I have to do something because it is mandated. Chalo, dharma hai, karna hai, duty. But beyond selfishness and beyond social is spiritual, where you are fully convinced and aware of your identity as a soul, your connection with the super soul, and hence your relationship with others in the right perspective. That's why United Nations, which is a science and data-based organization, in 2017, they said, we have created a marker for 2030 17 SDGs, but none of the countries are following that. Nobody is taking all our scientific analysis seriously. The UN, which is science and data-based organization, in a revolutionary step in 2017, created a new vertical never before heard. That was known as UN Faith for Earth. And they said, UN, which traditionally only works on science and data, UN is raising their hands and acknowledging that all scientific data and analysis and presentations to the world is only informing the population, not transforming the people's habits. So the UN is begging religious leaders, please come on board and exchange the message of mitigating climate change along with your other spiritual discourses. And so in 2017, a revolutionary vertical was started, UN Faith for Earth. They said different religions may have their so many differences, they may keep fighting and all, but when it comes to a house on fire, we have to unite. So on the cause of mitigating climate change, UN Faith for Earth was established. And 2020, they appointed 100 faith leaders across the world as UN Faith for Earth counselors. And on behalf of Govardhan Eco Village and ISKCON, I have also been appointed as a UN Faith for Earth counselor with the mandate to share with people the burning risk of climate change and how it's going to devour all of us unless we make serious adjustments And they said, the adjustment must not begin at a cosmetic level, but it must begin at the level of the intention. And therefore, right now, this principle of corporate spiritual responsibility is extremely crucial, extremely important for all of us to appreciate, understand, and implement in our own lives. Based on what Thakur Bhaktivinoda has spoken 150 years ago, that the intention inspired by fear, desire, duty is superseded by the intention of love. And that's why at the Govardhan Eco Village, we have created a model which shows harmony at all levels. And that's the whole idea, where people like Rajiv and others also supported this wonderful project. And many such villages across the world may be required. And inspired by those teachings, people in the cities, they need to also change. And therefore, the government is also saying that ESG and all those things are coming into play. But most importantly, these are all going to remain cosmetic unless deep within there is a transformation in the intention. So I would like to conclude by showing a video of the Govardhan Eco Village. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Rampant illiteracy, malnutrition, and lack of infrastructure. This is the story of Wada, one of India's most backward tribal areas. However, since 2010, ecotourism has become a lifeline for this region. Govardhan Eco Village's sustainable development model, which is based on harmony with the self, the environment, and the divine, has helped employ over 300 tribal families. More than 60,000 tribals have been provided free medical care.
मोठी बिंदूचं ऑपरेशन झालं मला आता चांगलं दिसतं.
30,000 free meals are provided to school children every day.
मुलं स्वतःहून शाळेत यायला तयार होतात.
Over 60 borewells have been installed.
पाण्याच्या सर्व अडचणी दूर झाल्या.
More than 300 families received training in organic farming.
आता पैसे येतात आणि बचत पण होते.
Govardhan Eco Village has transformed the lives of the most deprived communities in the world.
And the winner of the 13th UNWTO Award for Innovation in Non-Governmental Organization is Govardhan Eco Village Ecotourism as a Catalyst for Rural Development.
It's my honor and privilege to receive this award on behalf of Land of India. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to UNWTO for giving us this opportunity to share this message of sustainability on a larger scale, especially in this very special year where this year is being celebrated as the Year of Sustainable Tourism. My heartfelt gratitude to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, founder of ISKCON, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, who is the founder of the Govardhan Eco Village, Sanat Kumar Prabhu, who is heading the Rural Development Program at the Govardhan Eco Village, the community of devotees of ISKCON worldwide for their support, to Chitra Vishwanath, who's been our main guide in this project at the Eco Village, to our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji for spreading the message of yoga and the Vedic culture all over the world, and specifically to the Ministry of Tourism for their support, Government of India, and we hope and pray that we'll be able to utilize this honor to spread the message of peace, harmony, and sustainability more and more. Thank you very much.
Govardhan Eco Village is about 2.5 hours northeast of Mumbai in a very beautiful rural village area of Maharashtra. There's a very holy place in India which is considered most sacred to devotees of Krishna. It's called Vrindavan. And in that Vrindavan is a mountain named Govardhan, which represents environmental, ecological harmony with spiritual principles.
This place is very special. Certainly, it's unique in India and perhaps unique in the whole world. It's like a retreat center. It's like a spa. It's like an ashram. It's a place that's designed as an experiment to merge environmentalism, animal rights, and bhakti, spirituality, together, and it's working.
Come dance with me.
The amenities here are of a whole nother caliber. People, when they think of the words India and ashram, they think of harsh and rough living. From the Ayurvedic clinic, which not only gives treatments, but also has an Ayurvedic doctor who helps prescribe something that is specific for your dosha. The atmosphere that is created by the founder, Radhanath Swami Maharaj, and the atmosphere that is created by the devotees who work here is palpable. You can feel it in the air.
Originally, I was from Chicago. When I was 19 years old in 1970, I wanted to try to broaden my outlook of life. So I went on a journey. Ultimately, I hitchhiked from London to the Himalayas in India. And as I was traveling, I came to realize that the real social and environmental problems of the world are due to a spiritual crisis. A crisis in what we consider is actually meaningful and fulfilling in our life.
Radhanath Swami is a passionate person. The best passion is compassion, and he has an ample amount of that. And that type of passion is contagious.
Coming here and helping to, doing the seva, the service, helping with the cows, helping with to weave mats, helping with make pottery. It's actually fun. It's very simple lifestyle, and I think a lot of us crave that on different levels.
And it's sort of programmed into our culture that you look for recognition. You need it. For me, being here, I see it's far more powerful to be humble.
It was easy to complain about the tiny inconveniences that come with a New York City apartment. Oh, it's not big enough. Oh, the water pressure isn't great enough. When you live in a house that you see built from the ground up, every step along the way, it's very special.
When people come here, we're trying to inspire an educational, experiential alternative of a fulfilling, meaningful, sustainable, healthy life.
Apart from these jasmine flowers which you're seeing, he grows a lot of these ladyfingers, okra. Yeah. So we network with all these farmers so that we purchase them in our kitchen and use them.
Can we get this to the kitchen? We can give them to the,
And the inspiration of this project, Srila Prabhupada, he called this transformation simple living and high thinking.
We get 3,000 millimeters of rain annually. So the rainwater hits against those mountains, the Sahyadri mountain ranges, and flows down and collects here. And it is sufficient water for us to irrigate our fields for up to 6 to 7 months every year. The majority of India's population, which is 1.2 billion, lives in the villages. So one of the very important requirements to develop a village is how can water be conserved.
The process begins here. As you can see, the raw sewage is falling and there are some screens. The first chamber is called screen chamber, where we are trying to separate floating solids. This is the raw water where we began, and this is the treated water.
The uniqueness of this place comes from the fact that every waste is becoming a precious resource. That cow dung
becomes a fertilizer for earth. He needs fire or energy for cooking his food, and therefore all of the cow dung we utilize for biogas plant. We need to make houses, so we use the same earth, and we have created 250,000 bricks. We call this a symbiotic recycling model. Flushing your toilet, you are contributing to the growth of a papaya. You are contributing to the growth of flowers.
One of the greatest management gurus says that the greatest management challenge of the 21st century is managing oneself.
Many corporate heads are having seminars and retreats here. And they also see alternative ways by which they could focus their own corporations and feel a real sense of responsibility to humanity.
The thing I'm most compelled to do when I get home is really a seva. It's service. It gets us out of being so self-absorbed.
I always had too much. And now I want to have a simple life, like here. I love simple life, and my goal is to make a simple life in my home.
And if we just refocus our energies with these values, we could transform the world.
It's truly a miraculous, magical place, this planet.
Thank you, Gauranga Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing what Golden Eco Village stands for and how it fits so nicely in the theme that we've been speaking about on corporate spiritual responsibility. We've come to a very important part of the program, the Fireside Chat. That's the time when you have the opportunity to ask questions, to share your ideas, to share your thoughts on what has been spoken by Gauranga Prabhu. Very often the person who manages the Fireside Chat is an important personality because he has to regulate how the questions come through. And we are very honored today to have with us Mr. Girija Pandey. Some of us may have met him before. He's been a very good supporter, a good friend of Rajiv. He's a luminary in Singapore, a chairman of the Apex Avalon Consulting in Singapore. He's the ex-president of Tata Consultancy Services Asia Pacific. He chairs the Asia Board of Advisors of Chain IQ Limited in Zurich, which is a global sourcing and procurement firm. Mr. Pandey set up the TCS APAC, and under his chairmanship, the company grew to almost 11,000 associates in 14 over countries. He was also the vice chairman of the TCS joint venture with the Chinese government, and he was instrumental in building the business to over 2,500 associates in 6 cities in China. He has been a council member of the Singapore government's high-powered Manpower Council, which is set up by the Infocom Development Authority. He served on the advisory board of Singapore Management University, SMU, NTU Business School, and the National Council for Social Services, NCSS, in Singapore. Currently, he serves on the boards of global technology companies, the National Healthcare Group, Singapore International Chamber of Commerce, the Institute of South Asian Studies, which is actually a part of NUS, and he serves as a trustee of SINDA. He was recently awarded the Public Service Medal by the Government of Singapore on National Day, and he has received the Best CEO Award from Singapore HR Institute and 2 Social Services Award by the Ministry of Social and Family Development. He was also conferred the Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2019 by Penn IIM alumni in Singapore. He's been a regular speaker at very important places like the World Economic Forum in China. He speaks on business and technology forums in Asia. He's frequently sought after and interviewed for his variety and depth of experience. We are honored to have him here today, and we'd like to invite you, sir, to take us through the fireside chat. A warm round of applause.
Thank you. It's very difficult to say anything after such an excellent presentation, which has taken us through so many parts of what he was trying to say. So thank you very much for being in Singapore. Thank you very much for addressing us. I think sometimes in our daily life, we forget some of the issues you've raised today. And I think as the world gets more complicated, our daily life gets as complicated. I think you've talked about 3 or 4 things, and I want to touch on that before we start asking questions. One is the kind of a social and spiritual responsibility of corporates, and most of us are working in corporates, and I think that would be of interest. You also talked about the self itself, the self, its relationship to a bigger self, and what it entails. And you talked a lot about mental stress which happens. And I was very interested in that part because I'm also the chairman of the Institute of Mental Health. And this has been one of my, I go there, I see what are the challenges, what are the issues that we are facing in Singapore. And this is the same challenge, I suppose, because of what I call the hidden mental health pandemic around the world. You talked about the number of suicides in India, we see that here as well. And it always gets me thinking when I go to the campus there. So there are 2 types of, and you touched on one, which is stress, anxiety, depression. That is what we call mental wellness. And illness is where, of course, there are real story of schizophrenia, bipolar. So those are very different. But the wider problem is what we call mental wellness, which is the anxiety, depression. I think you raised, and I think this is where spirituality, and I believe in it, would help in keeping this issue of mental wellness and mental balance in place. So I think there are a lot of areas you've touched, and I as someone who's been intimately involved in the corporate world, and that too having worked with Tata Group for so many years, it was natural to us to talk about the stakeholder story. Jamshedji Tata many years ago, where he started, said that what comes from society goes back multiplied. Society is a stakeholder. So I think there are corporations across the world now who are imbibing this issue. I won't call it spirituality as yet in the corporate world, but certainly the responsibility that the stakeholder is society, and unless we do that, sustainability also will not follow, which is the other issue that you've raised. And I think the Govardhan village is an example, classic example of what you've done for sustainability. And I think I must make a visit now that I've seen it. So, when I was young, my mother taught me Gita as well, and specifically focused on the 12th chapter, which is what kind of a devotee does a Lord want? The nature of being a devotee. And one of the shlokas I always remember in my life, and that's where I'll start the questioning with you to explain to me yet again, is when he says to Arjun, Sanyamyendri yagrama sarvatra samabuddhaya shitokshan sukhaddukheshu samasanga vivarjita. Equanimity. Equanimity, whether it is pain, whether it is dukh, whether it is sukh, how do you maintain equanimity? And that brings us into mental wellness. I always think about this when I actually am in the institute. So Let me ask the first question to you. Where do you think, in reference to the chapter 12, how do we bring equanimity, which will bring mental stillness and peace?
Thank you, Girijaji, for a wonderful question. And glad to know that you had the opportunity to come across the Gita at a very important age in your life. So, the point about equanimity is brought up by Krishna in response to Arjuna, right in the second chapter itself. When Arjuna asks Krishna, Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha, samadhistasya keshava. So he calls a person in equanimity as sthita pragya. So sthita pragya means that in spite of all changes, cyclones happening around, the person is not affected. He witnesses the change, but is not affected by the change. So this is basically the whole idea of the Gita. How you can live in a world filled with change, but not remain affected by that change. There is only one way we can do that. If you identify that innermost level of your identity, because all of us have 8 kinds of identities. When you go beyond these 8 identities, and then you identify yourself with the soul within, then only that equanimity is possible. Otherwise, our modern education system and lifestyle is forcing us to identify with these 8. And this 8 is what we call as material life. What are these 8? First, body, Atma, the body, identity with the body. Any change with the body, a doctor's visit, a doctor's report, it shows some change, it causes anxiety. Jaya, wife or husband, changes continuously happen in that dynamics, puts us in anxiety. Sutta, third, children, identity with respect to the children and their education and their future and their life choices and this and that. Agara, fourth, house. All of us have an identity with respect to house. Pashu literally means horse, but Prabhupada calls it horsepower, vehicles. Dravina, money. With respect to money, we have a relationship, we have an identity. That changes, our life also changes. Bandhushu, social acceptance, social rejection. Our respect with respect to society, social circles, how do they react and respond? So we have a certain identity with respect to that. Rajye, the 8th identity we have is with respect to our area of control, influence. For somebody who's in business, it may be with respect to the business. And that's why when the businesses go through transition, it puts a lot of pressure. The people who are leading that transition go through anxiety. The people who are affected by that transition go through the anxiety because there is change. Or even in a house, just like someone gets married and a daughter-in-law comes to the house, so just in a kitchen, the area of control changes. So it may not be always a huge business, but it could be any area of influence. So these are the 8 domains which create various identities. So therefore, Atma Jaya Sutagara Pashu Dravina Bandhushu Rajye Cha Avikale Nityam Virudha Mamatam. Beyond these 8, how to remain as a person in equanimity? is when instead of relating with these 8, you realize I am a soul who has a relationship with the super soul. So that soul doesn't change, super soul doesn't change. That equation and relationship between the soul and super soul remains constant, even in the midst of all kinds of chaotic changes in these 8 domains. So therefore, small change creates small fear, medium change creates medium fear. The most irreversible, irrevocable change is when the soul is shunted out of the body, called death. Therefore, the fear of death is the highest and most intense. Why? Because it is the most drastic, irreversible change. And therefore, spirituality is different from life coaching, is different from business coaching, is different from life mentoring, is different from, all kinds of motivational speeches. Why? Spirituality is the only domain which actually acknowledges experiences beyond death. So therefore, when people say, hey, you are a spiritual person, you study Gita and all, can you help me remain peaceful? Can you help me make more money? I say, Baba, for all of those things, there are fantastic experts available in this world. If your domain of thought process is only till death, believe me, we are not the greatest authorities. There are millions of amazingly gifted people who can help you do wonderful things in life. Where does spirituality come into the picture? When you bring in death into the picture. Because we have monopoly in the subject matter of how to deal with death and beyond. From that point onwards, if you are planning, so when I go for tourism conferences, people look at me in Saffron and say, hey, what are you doing here? I say, we are also into tourism, Spirituality is tourism. Tourism is taking body from one point to another point. Spirituality is to take the soul from one point to another point. So therefore, when you come to that understanding of the level of the soul and the relationship of the soul with the super soul, that's where constancy or changelessness or a relationship which goes into eternity begins. Then one starts recognizing, in the midst of all changes, I can still remain beyond that change, unaffected by that change as a soul. So that is the whole process of spiritual. Recently I was called in the army for giving a talk in Nagrota Army Base in Jammu. So, Indian Army has almost 1.2 million soldiers. 450,000 to 500,000 soldiers are in the Northern Command. Northern Command is the most intense command because there is, conflict situations from Pakistan, China, and insurgency in Kashmir and all those things. And there is other commands. The total, 6 or 7 commands are there. So I gave a talk. It was on a wellness 2-day session. I was one of the speakers. There were 300 people live, and the whole thing was being relayed on the army channels, and people were calling in from Siachen, from Uri, and various other, border provinces, soldiers on duty. And then I just mentioned at the very end of the talk, while thanking everybody, that last 30 years I have been giving talks across the whole world in different countries, universities, institutions, corporates. But this is the first time in 30 years I got an invite from the army. I never got an invite. I'm wondering what happened. And so the general officer in command later talked to me in private and he said, actually, you're right. That so far we also were thinking we have solutions to all the problems. But in last 3 years, 3 to 4 years, we have realized, and the statistics are there in Google, which I checked later, the number of deaths in the army caused by suicide and fratricide has exceeded the number of deaths happening per year due to combat. So the army is recognizing that the enemy within is more powerful now than the enemy without, and it cannot be ignored. And so, as you rightly said, sir, this is the need of the hour. And when you look at mental wellness and you try to approach the wellness only from the perspective of what is changing, then you cannot apply a deeper level solution, as you just mentioned. The equanimity which is being described in the Gita is that which comes from the level of the soul. And therefore Krishna takes the time out to explain the Gita to Arjuna for 1 hour before the battle. Right? And therefore we inspire people that you also try to practice some kind of acknowledgement of your spiritual identity on a regular basis before you get into the battle mode. So preparing yourself for the battle. So that's the understanding of equanimity in the Gita.
Thank you. That was very relevant, I thought, in today's context. The other issue which you raised earlier on was this give back to society. I think it's as important. Most of us here are from the Grihastha ashram. You are from the Sannyas ashram. So Grihastha ashrams have certain responsibilities and duties which they perform. Of course, in life they are busy with their own family, work, environment and everything else. But there is always a certain element, and everyone wants to do it. It's not that they don't want to do it, is to give back to the society which has given you so much, wherever you are. And I think that becomes more and more important today as frictions in societies grow. As you mentioned, one is this whole issue of social media. And the other is, as we see, is this huge income inequality, wealth inequality that continues. And that creates social frictions, and everyone, and societies which have a stronger, cohesive element in it tend to have people who give back. And I think, I must say, I'm proud to say that in Singapore we have seen a far more cohesive environment, because there are a lot more people who are involved in society itself, both by giving all kinds, whether they're volunteers, whether they give donations, whether they step in and help. And that is something which I see, okay, and I'm involved in many of these organizations which do that. So I think one of the things that we have to look at is how do we really seriously think of giving back? And each one has its contributions to make. Most of us here are immigrants, long stayers, immigrants. And I think there is a need, in addition, to be more giving as you are a newcomer to society than otherwise. And I remember a story I heard once about when the Parsis arrived in India in 1000 AD. They were fleeing religious persecution, and they came and landed in Gujarat. And they couldn't obviously speak the same language, so they were exchanging by hand signs. And they said, the king, the local king came out when he saw these boats coming in and said, basically there is no place here. We are already too many. And the Parsi priest who was leading the team, he took a glass of water and put some sugar in it and said, this is how we will live within the community. And I suppose that's a real example of a model community which imbibes within the community it comes. So I think a lot of us here are people from outside. And I think there is a need to give back, as you said, as part of course we do it as part of sometimes corporate social responsibility and sometimes social impact. But I think that is as important to bring some level of tranquility in your life, that you are doing something more than just earning money or succeeding in the corporate world or wherever. So I think there is an element of spirituality which comes out of giving. And I think you touched on it. And I just thought you might like to give us a sense of what you think about it.
Thank you. That's a very important point you have touched upon. In all the spiritual traditions, interestingly, Girijaji, which is also going to be part of the book which I am writing, there may be differences amongst all the religions, but all of the religions have amazingly one thing in common. And common to the extent of even getting the same number of how much charity should be given. So in Islamic tradition, they call it zakat, 10%. In Christianity, they call it tithing, again 10%. In Sikhism, they call it Dashwand, 10%. In Jains also, in Buddhist tradition also, in Judaism also, and in Hinduism, I found verses in the Skanda Puran, which also refers to that dana as 10%. Interestingly. And basically, the Skanda Puran verse refers that when you are trying to perform an act of charity, what really creates the impact is not the act per se. When you say that I want to enhance my dharma, that dharma is enhanced when you perform activity with shraddha or faith. So therefore the important thing is not the act, but the understanding and cognizance of why I am acting the way I am acting. So therefore, corporate spiritual responsibility is something which I am trying to share as a very important concept, because we as souls must be aware that whatever we are receiving, they are all gifts from God. And therefore, we have duty towards other souls. Just like, to give an example, in the Palghar district, where the Govardhan Eco Village is, it is a neighboring district of the financial capital of India, Bombay's neighbor. But being neighbor of financial capital, the average income of a family in Palghar district is 27,000 rupees per annum. $1 a day. You can imagine the kind of disparity. So many times, families come with their kids and tell me, अरे बेटे का IIT नहीं हो रहा है, इनका यहाँ नहीं हो रहा है. So I say that out of the 600 million workforce in India, only 4% of India's workforce is in the formal corporate sector. Only 3% of the workforce is in the formal government sector. Only 7% of India's total workforce is formally employed in any of these sectors. 93% of India's workforce is in the unorganized sector. Nowadays, euphemistically, you call it MSME, micro, small, medium enterprise, or whatever. But it is all these on the street, they are selling this, small shop here, there, farmers. 93%. So therefore, the majority, the way they are living, if you look at it, that actually, if you look at that on a continuous basis, every moment you will feel, I have been highly blessed. And out of the 27 crore kids who are in the K to 12 in India, from the K to 12, from the kindergarten till 12th standard, there is a 88% dropout rate in India. That means if 100 kids enter kindergarten, beyond 12th standard, only 12 kids will enter college. 88 will drop out in that whole journey. So these are the realities. But many times, as my friend Deshpande from Boston, who's been very actively involved with Deshpande Foundation in Hubli, Dharwad, and does a lot of philanthropic work, he tells me, out of the 7.6 billion population of the world, 2 billion has disposable income. 5.6 billion of the world population, they will be at the receiving end. So all the corporates, businesses, the kind of world all of you are living in, is in that 2 billion. And all of those in that 2 billion, their paradigm is, for their businesses to remain relevant, first they need innovation. Only when your particular product or business or service is unique, then only on the basis of innovation there will be relevance. Only then when there is relevance, there is impact. So the most important item for all businesses to create impact is innovation. So continuous innovation. But for the remaining 5.5 billion in the world who are struggling with hunger, livelihood, water, sanitation, basic facilities, what we call as the social sector. For them, for impact, first is relevance. No water, that is reality. No food, that is reality. So therefore, first you identify the problem which is relevant, and now how to bring water, you may bring in innovation. So relevance comes first, because reality is already there. There is no food in the belly. Now how you will provide food deep into the forest and help them grow and all, that will require innovation. But relevance comes first, then innovation, then there is impact. So you just reverse and flip the whole thing around. So therefore, if this 2 billion is aware of how the remaining 5.5 billion is living, and they are aware not even what I have received is not something which I can take full credit
But as the Gita says, there are the 5 causes of action. The 5th is Daiva. Then there is a sense of gratitude for what I have received. And then there is a sense of responsibility where you feel that what I am doing is simply sharing my gifts with my own family. So therefore, if a family member shares with other family members, it is part of his duty. So that's the perspective. Otherwise, there is a true story in Las Vegas, in a hospital known as Sunrise Hospital. They found that there was before time deaths happening in the ICU. In terminally ill patients. When they put an inquiry, they found out that the nurses in Las Vegas had got into a habit of gambling in casinos in their off time, non-duty time. Then, when they would come and report on duty, they still had that habit. That habit overcame them so much, they could not resist gambling on duty in the ICU. And so they started gambling on various patients. Which patient will die first? Bed number 12 or bed number 13, and they would start betting on that. And then at a certain point, when the stakes grew further, when they saw that they are going to lose, some of them would switch off the life support system just to win the bet. So that's why, we may think, how does it matter this way, that way, it's all my money, this. But if we are not conscious, it's only a matter of time that the lack of consciousness will pull us in various directions and we would have no control. Therefore, as Rajiv said at the very beginning, earn with integrity, spend with compassion, but this is all part of conscious business, And I wanted, Manish to show a beautiful letter which the famous G.D. Birla, Ghanshyam Das Birla, he has written to his son B.K. Birla, Basant Kumar Birla. Right? So, maybe I'll request Devaki Nandan Prabhu, can you just read it?
Whatever I'm writing, you should read. Whatever I'm writing, you should read even when you are grown up and also at your old age. I'm writing this from experience as to how life must be lived. Birth as human is a rarity, and when born as human, whoever misuses the birth, it is like he lived as an animal. You have wealth, health, good social connections. If you use them for the service of mankind as a good human being, these are successful, else they are devil's tools. Never use wealth on selfish ends or merry spending, as wealth may not be there always. Spend less on self, more on public welfare, and for the welfare of distressed. Wealth is a force. Possibility of injustice is likely with this force or power. Take care that no injustice is done. Leave some good morals for your children. If they indulge in merrymaking, they may become sinful and spoil our business. Do not pass on wealth to such unworthy children. Rather use it for public welfare or distribute amongst deserving poor. Do not have mental blindness or passion for such children. Boundless effort and labor has been put in by we brothers to build the business, assuming that our children will make best use of wealth we have generated. Never forget God. He gives good sense and intellect. Have control on sensuous impulses, else those will sink you. Do exercise and yoga daily. Health is our biggest wealth. Health gives deftness, accomplishment, and prosperity. I have seen our unhealthy millionaires become poor and frail. Eat meals, feeling as medicine. Eat for living, not live for eating. G.D. Birla.
Yeah, wonderfully said. I am reminded as I have seen him. I used to in BITS Pilani. So that was an example of the giving. Yeah. So I think we've had an interesting session today. There will be some Q&As. Let's take a few questions before we end. So let me open the floor. Just, say your name and ask a short question so that everyone has an opportunity. Otherwise, there's Alok there. Yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you, Gauranga Prabhu, for the wonderful mind-opening session. One quick question. You gave the definition of love as a service which is done without any intention, right?
Selfish consideration.
Yeah, selfish consideration. So you gave a beautiful synergy of how our thought process should be towards love, giving the whole example of fear and the steps therein. My question was, what happens when mind comes into picture there? That is when all the turmoil starts, right? When mind starts thinking, that is when this whole stepwise effort of going towards love from duty and all, that starts getting disturbed. So how do we tackle that, or how do we address that concern?
I call it the ABCD of spirituality. A for association. Because you heard certain things here, you get excited, but then to keep it going, you need association. B for books. You need to read the right books, be in the right space to understand those books. C is contemplation. As you hear also in this letter from G.D. Birla ji, written in 1934, way back, that spend some time in daily contemplation. And D is have a regulated diet. So as Sir has rightly mentioned about the mental illness which is growing, one of the reasons is this imbalance. The mind is supposed to be exposed to external stimuli for certain duration of time, of certain kind of stimuli. But since this online generation has begun, we are bombarding the mind day and night and keeping it active beyond its capacity normally. If somebody is told, you run everyday marathon, even the biggest marathon runner will not survive. But we are subjecting the mind to a daily marathon and expecting the mind to remain healthy. So therefore, we need to be sensitive to this fact that the mind needs a certain balanced approach. And that is what is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. You want to add something, sir?
No, I think this is where the equanimity issue comes up. How do we keep a balance, mental balance, with all the conflicting issues around us? And I think that's the challenge. So let me take some more questions. I know Alok asked the question, and then after that we'll come to you. Yes.
Thank you, Gauranga Prabhu and Girija, for a fascinating discussion. My question is a practical tip for corporate leaders as to how to have this realization of your own identity, which is the spirituality. In today's environment where corporate leaders are more focused on corporate results and driving the organization in achieving those results, how to get this spiritual element, and how can they go about, getting it done?
Yeah, see, traditionally, people would come to temples and satsangs and everything. But if the corporate leaders find it difficult to be seen in a temple kind of environment, then I think it is now the responsibility of temples to evolve to Temple 2.0, where an individually practicing spiritual businessman is available to give mentorship on how he applies spirituality in his own life to various people on a one-to-one basis. Because it's a fact, I know that so many people may not be able to, they may not be comfortable coming to a full-fledged temple setting openly for various reasons. But there should be, a line or a number or a person or a channel available by which if a successful corporate or a businessman feels that intuitively I know I need to do something spiritual but I don't know where to begin. He knows there is a channel I can connect and there will be confidentiality maintained. He has confidence in the counseling which he gets there, and he knows that this is tried and tested and the person himself is experiencing these things. So we have started making those kinds of channels available, and one such channel is this Artha Forum, and individual spiritual mentorships to add to your current corporate profiles are available. Otherwise, temples are always there. The temples are always bubbling with energy, enthusiasm, crowds. If you can handle it, great. But if you can't deal with that, and you don't want to be seen as a regular satsangi, the satsang should be able to, incarnate itself in forms which the corporate can feel more aligned with. So that's the need of the hour. And I think I congratulate Rajiv, Devakinandan Prabhu and other members of Artha Forum for keeping that spirit alive. Okay?
Okay, there's a third question at the back. Yes, Rahul.
Hi, namaste. Thank you so much for coming to Singapore. Okay, my question is about CSR, which is slowly morphing into what we call ESG. And the question is more about intent than the outcome. So how do we ensure that corporates and also we as individuals are not doing the right thing for the wrong reason? What I mean by that is here in Singapore, SGX has something called comply or explain. In BSc, they have BRSR. So people will be doing these tick box exercises. And we have seen this in the past when you talked about the Lehman crisis and the financial crisis. So you have ways to rate bonds, and everybody was AAA, and yet there was a collapse. So how do we make sure that intent is more important than just this tick box exercise that, okay, I have to do this, or I have to do 2% CSR, hence I will do this?
Rajiv, why don't you share something? Because give a mic.
I was discussing something and you just have to repeat the question.
No, he's saying that how do you make sure that a businessman does his business with the right intention in the beginning rather than just for compliance sake, just for ticking the boxes, as they say. But how do you bring in that feeling, right?
I will just try to very briefly share and then I'll take Girja's inputs more. Is that, if you look at what is the why that you are doing business, if you see even Simon Sinek, who talks about those businesses which have the why very clearly define ultimately why are you doing business. Even like Jamshedji Tata, who set the goals, that if the goal of setting up your business, if the goal of what you're doing is not just for taking but also set up in a structure which includes giving, then you will see a lot of the decisions and everything else falling in place. If the why of doing business is only taking, why is it that in the world, while I do acknowledge, Girja, you mentioning that there are more companies, but right now, I mean, we see very few companies which are set up the Tata way. Why isn't that? I mean, if you look at the thousands of businesses that existed 100 years back, they don't exist today. Tata's, set up their business with the right intent, with the right structure, and it's not verbal structure, but a legally tied structure. Now, we are just hoping if more and more businesses, we do have examples of IKEA and a few others, if more businesses in India are set up the Tata way, then you will see that their intent, their way of doing business. In fact, even Lakshmi Mittal, once who visited one of the Jamshedpur, said that I don't see the kind of love that the employees have at Tata's exist in my company. I mean, he's not exactly set up that way. So people are recognizing this. So I will always suggest that whatever you're doing, important thing is why. And the second is that, I just heard His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Swami saying that bring that concept of seva in what you're doing. You may be in the field of politics like Mahatma Gandhi, but, the concept of seva can be applied to any field, and why not business? And then can that seva be in a true sense, not in a verbal sense? Girja, I'll just request you to add.
ESG is a big chapter. And so what I think, the ESG movement has overtaken the CSR movement because we are realizing the limits to growth. Really, the world is realizing sustainability and the limits to growth. Okay, so therefore, along with the challenge of sustainability, we are now focused on the social impact. How does society react to it? What is the value business generates for society, and the stakeholder, society being a stakeholder? I think it is not that it was not there earlier. It was there with few. Now a larger and larger number of companies are realizing. Some are probably still in the compliance and the tick box stage. But if you see a larger and larger number of chairmen and CEOs very solidly talking about the social impact and what businesses have to do beyond just returning shareholder money. I think that realization is coming, and is coming because of the limits to growth issue, which was not the case earlier. Earlier we were abusing the environment, left, right, and there was no cost to environment. Today we realize there is a cost to environment, and today we also realize that society gives you a license to operate. You cannot just operate. There's a society which gives you a license to operate, and therefore businesses have to be responsible to that license. And I think that's why it will start changing. That's okay. Any other question? Yeah.
Sanjeev Iyer. Fascinating conversation, and of course always a pleasure to listen to you, Gauranga Prabhu. I had the privilege to visit GEV as well, so I must say that you had experienced it yourself. I mean, the video is impactful, but it's quite different when you experience it yourself. Anyway, my question is, and Girija, you talked about most of us with our corporate life background, we all see what the stresses are that the people are going through. And it is definitely a fascinating concept to get into the S becoming spirituality and not just social responsibility. My question is, some of the corporations have started looking into driving mindfulness inside the organization, and through that, the employees reaching out elsewhere as well. But that has not really become mainstream. So while all the stresses and mental wellness and things get talked about, not much is really being done in terms of systematically and sustainably driving mindfulness within the corporation. And if done well, to your comment, Prabhu, corporations can also become temples in a way as far as spirituality is concerned. So would love to get your thoughts on driving mindfulness in systematically and sustainable way, and the roles the corporations can play in that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. Today, the whole world is basically moving based on the efforts made by the corporates. And I think if not just corporations, governments, which is the bureaucracy, governments, corporates, and the civil society, if all the three come together understanding this concept, then the synergy will be very much created. Even just to give an example, like while running the eco-village, we would be part of the village, developing it, but sometimes even we could get disconnected with the vision. And it happened when Radhanath Swami one time said that now we have Goshala and everything, which is quite the normal thing to do for Hindus. But we should go beyond just Goshala and also have other animals and care for other animals, and including get animals like donkeys. So it was like culturally a big shock for me, because typically we don't generally kind of look towards donkeys. So I was trying to avoid that topic, but he kept following up. And in one of the conversations, I was reporting about the construction. He interrupted me, Radhanath Swami, and said, "Did the donkeys come?" I said, "Arey Baba, already one is working there. How many more you need?" He says, No. I know culturally you may not be ready for this, but it is important because ultimately Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So what is the problem? So anyway, it was not that I was convinced, but because he was putting pressure, so we got. Then when he came to Eco Village from America, first thing as soon as he entered, I was showing him some construction latest what we did. He said, no, I want to go and see the donkey first. So I took him there. When we went near the donkey ran away. So he turned to me and said, "Why did the donkey run away?" So I was thinking, how do I know? I am not a donkey. I can't read his mind. So then he said, the donkey ran away because wherever the donkey was previously, he was being mistreated. So whenever the donkey sees human being, he runs away. So you have to change that donkey's consciousness with compassion and treat that donkey with love. And to treat that donkey with love, every day you have to massage the donkey, brush. So I asked him, who will massage? Then he looked at me and said, you. So I was like, what's going on here? So I started getting all kinds of identity crisis. What are we doing here in the first place and things like that? Because sometimes when you have leaders who drive home leadership from the vision point of view, and when someone is on the ground always focused on execution, it is not always easy to catch up. Because you may start thinking, I think the vision is becoming a little too much. So then what happened was, then one of the biggest yoga groups in America, they came to do a recce. And when this leader of this yoga group saw the whole eco-village, they liked it, the bricks, the construction, this, that, everything fine. But when she came into this space where the donkeys were, she looked at the donkeys and she said, wow, you guys are keeping the donkeys in such a wonderful way and taking care of them, respecting them. One of the main core principles of our yoga group is respect for animals. And we have been to so many places in India, but what we see here is something unique. And because of the respect you are giving even to all living forms, not just cows, but including donkeys, our yoga group has decided to come to the eco-village every year. And for last 10 years, they've been coming every year. I looked at the donkey and said, I didn't know the marketing powers of this guy here. So sometimes you may be in the organization, you may be in the project, you may be executing also. But sometimes still you need someone to help you align that there is a deeper vision. And it is not just ticking the boxes, but understanding why your organization is doing a certain thing in the first place. So that reminder, I think, is required for everybody.
True. Let's take the last question. I think we've spent a lot of time. Yeah.
Subra. This connects to the last thing that was just now said, and first of all, thank you very much for this fascinating discussion this morning. I get conflicted between individual spiritual responsibility and what we term in this call or in this discussion or otherwise as corporate spiritual responsibility. Now, corporates are inanimate entities which have some definition, have some license to operate, probably have a stated vision, mission, and goal, and have to follow some regulations. It's not humans. It doesn't have a soul. It just had what I just said. Individuals, human beings, have soul and everything else that we spoke about. And you connected very nicely about how the individual soul connects to the larger soul, therefore somehow creating spirituality. So my question really is, when we talk about corporate spiritual responsibility, what is the nuance that separates that from individual spiritual responsibility? Because employees will come and go, presidents, CEOs will come and go. But to enshrine what we call CSR, corporate spiritual responsibility, into corporates, into the inanimate entities that they are, what is it that has been clicking, if at all?
Thank you. Your question has been very animated. So recently I was appointed as a visiting faculty in IIM Nagpur. So I asked the director again, hey, I'm going to come in saffron, is it okay? A saffron professor, visiting faculty, and they issued an appointment letter and everything. So I said, wow, India is changing. So as part of the curriculum, they requested life management skills. And so I created a framework based on the Gita that whatever may be, the designation and the kind of business, any business leadership would require these 8 skills, which is first purpose, focus, habits, relationships, determination, discrimination, humility, and tolerance. So ultimately, when you are looking at physical health, you are looking at certain health parameters, right? To maintain those healthy parameters of ideal blood pressure, cholesterol levels, heartbeat rates, this and that, somebody may take allopathy, somebody may take homeopathy, somebody may take naturopathy, somebody may be just going to Tirupati. Whatever it is. But when you say health, it means that health is measured by certain parameters. So similarly, when you say spiritual, so we are not looking at some ritual, we are not looking at specific religious forms, we are not looking at some externals. We are looking at these manifestations which I just mentioned. An individual, a leader having purpose, a leadership having certain habits, certain focus, a leadership which prioritizes relationships, like Sir is from the Tata Group, so it's like preaching to the choir, but the famous example of J.J. Irani, who just departed a few days ago. When he was the MD of Tata Steel, at that time, Jamshedji, our Ratan Tata's JRD Tata, he visited Tata Steel factory in Jamshedpur. And so just outside the factory, this conversation happened where Mr. J.J. Irani pointed to the gates of Tata Steel and said, this is early 80s, that if we continue to produce steel the way we are doing today with such high costs per capita, very soon you, that means JRD Tata and me, would be standing outside the steel plant selling tickets for a steel museum because we would become irrelevant. So then JRD agreed. And he said the only way we can keep this afloat is we have to decrease the overall cost. And one of the main ways of doing that is to decrease the human resource from 88,000 to 40,000. But then the whole Tata ethos was around benefits to the stakeholders. It very much conflicted with what their original idea and purpose was. But because their intention was very clear that we have to do business, but at the same time caring for people, so they worked out an entire system which is known as early separation system, where they offered that anybody takes voluntary retirement after age of 55, they will get the complete salary till the age of 60. If from 55, they will get 1.5 times that salary. And like that, they made a scheme. And when people protested, but what about our children? Because the Tata had a system that even the next generation would get employment. So at that time, J.J. Irani said, if we continue producing steel this way, there will be no Tata Steel for your kids. So right now, think about how we can save the business. And gradually, they started implementing this. And over a 10-year period, they actually managed to decrease the manpower, but at the same time keeping their ethos, where nobody felt that they have been shunted out unceremoniously or forcibly. So therefore, what you said is right. Yes, the individual, it is much more easy. But when a group comes together and that individual spiritual culture is translated into an overall organizational culture, which is more difficult, but if the leadership is able to translate those priorities in a leadership group, then ultimately the whole organization will also see a reflection of those ethos. But that requires will of the top level leadership to translate that in an aligned manner amongst themselves first, and then percolate it down through the entire organization. Those are my thoughts.
So let me just add one more, Subra, to you. Have a look at Stewardship Asia Council. Temasek has set up this for the last 5 years, and I'm involved with that. Stewardship Asia Council basically is saying, which companies are durable? Why do companies survive 100, 150 years, 200 years? And what makes them survive? And this is one of the issues. And in fact, in that book that was written, the first chapter was Tata Group. So I think we've had a lot of time. You all will agree that this has been an excellent Saturday morning spent today. Please join me in thank you very much for coming here all the way, Gauranga Prabhu. And thank you.
when Gauranga Prabhu was speaking about this point of the donkey, I was really reminded of an incident in Dwarka when I was there with my spiritual master and two of my god brothers. One was Gujarati and the other was Marathi. And in the morning they had to milk the cow. So my spiritual master was telling them that you have to be very tender and passionate and compassionate with the cow, because then, you know, there's a direct proportionate relationship between how you take care of a living being and how they respond to you. That's a very important concept, and it's just not with human beings, it's with every living entity in this world. But that morning, you know, my god brother got kicked by the cow when he was being milked. And so they came up and saw my spiritual master and said, well, we tried to be compassionate and we spoke to the cow. And as we were speaking to her very nicely, you know, we were trying to milk her. And then she gave one of us a kick. So Maharaj asked that god brother, in what language you spoke to her? And he said, I spoke Marathi because I'm from Maharashtra. And he said, silly boy, this cow is Gujarati. We're in Dwarka. This is Gujarat. So you have to speak to the cow in Gujarati. So a lot of corporate social responsibilities, really aligning our intentions with a little bit of introspection. What Rahul Prabhu brought up just now. How are we going to move around ticking off boxes? My partner in my law firm, generally in the beginning of the month, we look at cases. He's very caught up by the law of karma. And he keeps telling me that, you know, Siva, we have to do 2 or 3 pro bono cases because then, you know, we'll tick off the brownie points and get good karma for the firm. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. So a very key part of corporate spiritual responsibility is the spirituality element. And it starts with the individual. And if there are enough individuals, we call it sadhu sangha, there are enough individuals in a corporation that begin to believe and align themselves and speak the same language, then what we will see is an entire corporation transforming itself. And all this must happen on the platform of time. That's why it requires time, it requires patience. And that's why we're gathered here. We hope that Artha Forum will be a platform where we can actually transmit these values. But it has to start with us. I think that's what Gauranga Prabhu and Girija Prabhu are trying to tell us here. It has to start with us. You know, 3 men were looking and waiting for a mango to drop from a tree. And when it finally dropped, they were going to bite into the mango, which they were waiting for all day. But eventually what happened was, one of the men stopped and asked, what do you think made the mango drop finally? And one man said, well, it was the wind, you know, and the branch moved and the mango dropped. The other man said, no, you didn't see a bird. It actually sat on that branch and the weight of it caused the mango to drop. And they began philosophizing and speculating the reason why the mango dropped. But they never tasted it. A boy walks by, sees the mango, sees 3 grown-ups talking about the mango, as grown-ups normally do. And eventually he decides, let's just take the mango and taste it. And he walked away with the taste of the mango. And the 3 men were left talking and talking and talking till the cows come home, but they never got to taste the mango. So today we have done enough talking, but I think it's time to act. That's why we're here today. And the precursors to actions are devotees like Gauranga Prabhu. They have the ability to bring the temple to you, and not that you have to go to the temple. They have brought the temple today. They've spiritualized the atmosphere. So my first vote of thanks is to Gauranga Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu, for coming all the way here, giving us such wonderful realization and sharing so much within such a short time. We want to see you here more often, more often. Thank you to Girija Pandey Prabhu. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your pedigree, your experience, it's crystallized many of the issues that we were looking at today. So thank you very much. Thank you to Rajiv, because he's the person who's inspired all of us. Why are we here today? Because of our relationship, right? Because of our relationship. And it wasn't a ritual, it was spiritual, right? You can do something with a ritual, but if you add spirit to it, like Rajiv has done, today all of you are here because you're spiritually connected to him, not business-wise. That comes after that, but you're spiritually connected to him. That's the essence of what we're speaking about. Thank you to Manish Prabhu and his team. It's not easy coming early, getting everything set up, so that we can all be here and be comfortable. So warm round of applause to them too. And thank you most of all to all of you, the audience. Many of you are so familiar faces. And I'm so glad to know that I don't see you in corporate settings. We actually see each other in houses doing kirtans and speaking about Krishna. That is the true element of spirituality. You've brought it to your homes, and yet you're practicing it so well in your companies and amongst your friends. So thank you so much to this audience. We hope to see you again. We'll keep you informed of more programs as they come. And if you feel that you want to be part of more of these initiatives, and if you want to expand on it, Rajiv is always here, ready to talk to you. I'm always here to serve you. And devotees like Gauranga Prabhu will keep coming through to inspire all of you. I think now we are going to be breaking up for the best part of the evening. Oh no, it's the morning still. Best part of the morning, and that is to have a bit of light. I think there's lunch, and there's going to be a full course. Please help yourself. The buffet is behind. This is a good time to mingle with everyone, right? And before I get everyone off, I think we want to present 2 bouquets. Can we have someone present it to them, please? Yeah. We'll start by giving. We'll request Gauranga Prabhu to give a bouquet to Girija Prabhu. And a wonderful book to top it off. Rajiv Prabhu, please. And from Rajiv, on behalf of all of us, to Gauranga Prabhu. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch. And don't miss an opportunity to speak to Gauranga Prabhu. He won't be able to have his lunch. He'll just be too busy talking to everyone now. Thank you very much. See you again.